Rain blurred the kindergarten windows as Jonathan Blackwood knelt beside his daughter, zipping her yellow raincoat up to her chin. Emma's dark curls framed eyes the color of spring leaves, eyes that mirrored the woman who had vanished 5 years ago. "Daddy, why does Miss Chen say I look like someone else?" Emma asked, her small fingers gripping his hand. Jonathan's chest tightened. "You just have one of those faces, sweetheart." The lie tasted bitter. Every day, he saw Victoria in their daughter's smile, in the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. Every day, the ghost of his greatest mistake haunted him through the child they had created together. Outside, parents clustered under umbrellas, collecting their children. Jonathan hoisted Emma onto his hip, her backpack bumping against his side as they pushed through the double doors. The rain had softened to a mist and the parking lot smelled of wet asphalt and exhaust. Then he saw her. She stood beside a silver sedan, dressed in a charcoal suit that spoke of boardrooms and power. Her auburn hair was shorter now, swept back in a way that made her cheekbones look sharper, more striking. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart. Those green eyes that had once looked at him with love, then with devastation, now held something far more dangerous. Recognition. Victoria's gaze locked onto Emma, and Jonathan watched the color drain from her face. Her lips parted, trembling, as if she wanted to speak but had forgotten how to form words. Emma squirmed in his arms. "Daddy, who's that lady? Why is she staring? Get in the car, Emma." Jonathan's voice came out rougher than he intended. "But I want to. Now." He set Emma down, watching as she climbed into the back seat, her confusion evident in the way she kept glancing back at the strange woman in the parking lot. Jonathan closed the door and turned to face the past he thought he had buried. Victoria took a step forward, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. The distance between them felt both infinite and suffocating. "She's beautiful," Victoria whispered, her voice cracking on the last word. "How old is she?" Jonathan's jaw clenched. "You don't get to ask that." "Jonathan, please." "You're dead, Victoria. You've been dead for 5 years." His hands curled into fists at his sides. "What the hell are you doing here?" Victoria's composure cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks as she looked past him to the car where Emma pressed her face against the window. "I came back for her. For both of you. I came back to explain everything." "There's nothing to explain." Jonathan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You left. You faked your own death and abandoned our daughter before she was even born. You don't get to walk back into our lives because you suddenly feel guilty. You don't understand what happened, what they made me do." "I don't care." Victoria's eyes flashed with something raw and desperate. "You should. Because the people who destroyed us 5 years ago, they're coming for you next. And this time, they won't stop until they take everything." She pressed a business card into his palm, her fingers ice cold against his skin. Then she turned and walked back to her car, each step measured and deliberate, as if leaving was physically tearing her apart. Jonathan looked down at the card. Harrison Tech, Chief Innovation Officer, Victoria Reeves. Behind him, Emma knocked on the window. "Daddy, are you okay?" He wasn't. He hadn't been okay since the day Victoria disappeared. And now, with her sudden reappearance and cryptic warning, he felt the foundation of his carefully rebuilt life beginning to crack. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number." The text message made his blood run cold. "Ask her about Margaret Cross. Ask her what really happened 5 years ago. Or I will." Jonathan's head snapped up, scanning the parking lot, but Victoria's car was already gone, swallowed by the rain and mist like a ghost returning to wherever ghosts lived when they weren't haunting the living. The coffee shop smelled of espresso and rain-soaked wool. Jonathan sat across from Victoria in a corner booth, the space between them charged with 5 years of unspoken pain. Emma was safe at his mother's house, oblivious to the earthquake about to split her world open. Victoria wrapped her hands around an untouched latte, her knuckles white. "Margaret Cross offered me a choice," she said quietly. "Leave and let Emma grow up with a father who loved her, or stay and watch you both destroyed." "That's convenient." Jonathan's voice was ice. "Blame a dead woman for your choices." "She's not dead." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jonathan stared at Victoria, searching her face for signs of delusion, of breakdown. He found only grim certainty. Margaret Cross died in a plane crash 3 years ago. I went to her funeral. Victoria pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. The photograph showed a woman with silver hair boarding a private jet in Monaco, date stamped 2 weeks ago. The face was older, harder, but unmistakable. She faked her death just like I did. Just like she taught me to do. Jonathan's world tilted. Why would she help you disappear? Because I found out what she was doing. Victoria's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The patents I developed at Quantum Industries? The innovations everyone thought I stole? Margaret was selling them to foreign competitors. She'd been doing it for years, using the company as a front for industrial espionage. That's insane. Is it? Think about it, Jonathan. Really think. Victoria leaned forward, urgency sharpening her features. Why did the evidence against me appear so suddenly? Why was it so perfect, so damning? Why did she encourage you to divorce me so quickly? Jonathan's mind raced back to that terrible week. The photographs of Victoria and Michael Harrison in compromising positions. The digital trail showing transfers of proprietary information. Margaret's sympathetic voice in his ear. I know this is painful, but you need to protect the company. Protect yourself. She came to me the night before the board meeting, Victoria continued. She had photographs of Emma's ultrasound. She had your mother's address, your sister's workplace. She said if I didn't leave quietly, if I didn't take the fall for her crimes, everyone you loved would become collateral damage. You should have told me. I tried. Victoria's voice broke. I came to your office that night. Do you remember? I was crying, begging you to listen, but you wouldn't. You said I disgusted you, that you'd make sure I never saw Emma again, that you'd bury me so deep I'd never crawl out. The memory slammed into Jonathan like a physical blow, her tear-streaked face, her desperate pleas, his own rage burning so hot he'd been blind to everything else. So I ran, Victoria whispered. I staged the accident, paid off the right people, and disappeared. I thought if I was gone, you'd both be safe. I thought Margaret would leave you alone if she got what she wanted. But she didn't. No. She's been circling Quantum Industries ever since, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now she's found it. Victoria pulled out another photograph. This one showed Jonathan's current business partner, Richard Chen, shaking hands with Margaret Cross. Richard is helping her orchestrate a hostile takeover. In 3 days, you'll lose everything you've built, just like I did. Jonathan's hands shook as he stared at the image. Richard was his oldest friend, had been since college. They'd built their consulting firm together, trusted each other with everything. I don't believe you. Then you're a fool. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't come back to beg for forgiveness. I came back to warn you. What you do with that warning is your choice. She turned to leave, but Jonathan caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity through both of them, a physical memory of what they'd once been to each other. Why now? He asked. Why come back after all this time? Victoria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Because Emma deserves to know her mother. And because I'm done running from Margaret Cross. She took 5 years of my daughter's life from me. She turned the man I loved into a stranger. I'm going to destroy her, Jonathan, with or without your help. She pulled free from his grip and walked out into the rain, leaving Jonathan alone with the wreckage of everything he thought he knew. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She's lying. Meet me at the old Quantum building tonight. Come alone and I'll show you proof. Bring her and Emma suffers. Jonathan's blood turned to ice. He looked up, scanning the coffee shop, but saw only strangers. Whoever was watching him, whoever was threatening his daughter, they were close. Too close. The Quantum Industries building stood abandoned, its windows dark like hollow eyes. Jonathan's footsteps echoed through the empty lobby as he entered through the service door, exactly as the text had instructed. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow. Hello, Jonathan. He spun toward the voice. Richard Chen emerged from the darkness, looking nothing like the friend Jonathan had known for 15 years. His expression was cold, calculated, predatory. Richard, what the hell is going on? I'm saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Richard pulled out a tablet, its screen glowing blue in the darkness. Victoria didn't tell you everything. She never does. He swiped through images. Bank statements, Wire transfers. All in Victoria's name, all dated within the last 6 months. Millions of dollars flowing from offshore accounts directly into Harrison Tech. She's been planning this for years, Richard said. The whole sob story about Margaret Cross? It's a cover. Victoria is working with Harrison Tech to acquire Quantum's patent portfolio. She'll use you to get inside access, then pull the rug out from under you. Jonathan's stomach churned. You're lying. Am I? How did she know about the takeover? How did she know I was involved? Richard stepped closer. Because she's been orchestrating it from the beginning. She needs you to trust her, to give her access to Quantum's systems. Then she'll destroy you, again. Margaret Cross is alive. I saw the photograph. Photoshop is a wonderful thing. Richard's smile was pitying. Jonathan, you're letting your guilt cloud your judgment. Victoria abandoned you and Emma. She faked her death. Why would you believe anything she says now? Because part of him still loved her. The realization hit Jonathan like a bullet to the chest. Despite everything, despite the 5 years of rage and grief, some broken piece of him had never stopped loving the woman Victoria had been. I have proof, Richard continued. Real proof, not manufactured evidence. Victoria Reeves doesn't exist. She's an identity Victoria Sterling purchased from a forger in Seattle. The woman you think you know? She's a ghost wearing a stolen life. Jonathan's phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. Don't trust him. It's a trap. Get out now. He looked up at Richard, whose expression had shifted into something darker. Behind him, 2 men emerged from the shadows. Security contractors, judging by their builds and the way they moved. I'm sorry, old friend, Richard said. But you've become a liability. Victoria will take the fall for your disappearance, and I'll console your grieving daughter. Everything works out perfectly. Understanding crashed over Jonathan like cold water. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about patents or takeovers. You're working with Margaret, he whispered. Margaret works for me. She always has. Richard's smile was razor sharp. Did you really think a woman like her operated independently? I've been positioning pieces on this board for a decade. Victoria was supposed to disappear permanently 5 years ago, but she proved more resourceful than expected. No matter. Tonight I correct that mistake. The contractors moved forward. Jonathan backed toward the door, but it slammed shut, the electronic lock engaging with a definitive click. Victoria was right about one thing, Richard said. Emma does deserve to know her mother. Unfortunately, she'll have to visit both her parents in the cemetery. Glass exploded inward as Victoria crashed through a second-story window, rappelling down on a cable. She hit the ground rolling, coming up with something clutched in her hand. Not a weapon, a USB drive. Looking for this? She shouted. Richard's face transformed into pure rage. Kill them both! The contractors rushed forward. Victoria threw the drive to Jonathan, who caught it on instinct. Then she launched herself at the first man, her movements precise and brutal. Years of running had taught her how to fight. Jonathan ran for the server room, Richard's footsteps pounding behind him. His hands shook as he jammed the drive into the terminal. Files flooded the screen. Margaret Cross's real identity, Richard's offshore accounts, a decade of theft, manipulation, and murder. It's over, Jonathan said as Richard appeared in the doorway. No, Richard pulled out a gun. It's just beginning. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. But the bullet didn't hit Jonathan. Victoria had thrown herself between them, her body taking the impact meant for him. She collapsed against the server, blood blooming across her white shirt like a terrible flower. Victoria! Jonathan caught her as she fell, his hands desperately trying to stem the bleeding. Her eyes found his, clear despite the pain. Save the file. Save Emma. Tell her I loved her every day I was gone. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called them. Maybe Victoria had planned for this too. Richard fled into the darkness, leaving Jonathan holding the woman he'd once loved, watching the life drain from her eyes for the second time in 5 years. Don't you dare die on me again, he whispered fiercely. Don't you dare! Victoria's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. I came back, didn't I? I always come back. Then her eyes closed, and Jonathan was left screaming her name into the empty building while sirens grew closer, and the uploaded files began spreading across the internet, exposing every crime Richard Chen and Margaret Cross had ever committed. But none of it mattered if Victoria didn't survive. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and failing hope. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring Victoria's fragile hold on life. The bullet had missed her heart by centimeters, the surgeon said. Lucky. Jonathan didn't feel lucky as he sat beside her bed, watching her chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. 3 days had passed. 3 days of police interviews and media storms and Richard Chen's arrest. Margaret Cross had vanished again, but her empire was crumbling. The files Victoria had collected exposed decades of corruption, but none of it mattered if she didn't wake up. The door opened softly. Jonathan looked up, expecting another nurse. Instead, his mother stood there holding Emma's hand. "Daddy!" Emma broke free, running to him. He caught her, holding her tight against his chest. "I told her you were helping a friend," his mother said gently, but she insisted on coming. Emma pulled back, her green eyes searching his face. "Is the pretty lady from school going to be okay?" Jonathan's throat closed. He looked at Victoria's pale face. Her auburn hair spread across the pillow like a halo. How could he explain this to his daughter? How could he tell Emma that the stranger she'd glimpsed in a parking lot was the mother who had loved her enough to disappear? "I don't know, sweetheart." Emma wiggled free from his arms and approached the bed with the fearless curiosity of childhood. She studied Victoria's face for a long moment, then reached out and touched her hand. "She has my eyes," Emma whispered. The simple observation broke something in Jonathan. Tears he'd held back for days finally spilled over. His mother moved to take Emma away, but he shook his head. "She's your mother," he said quietly. "Her name is Victoria, and she's the bravest person I've ever known." Emma's eyes widened. "My mommy?" "Yes. But you said she was in heaven." "I thought she was." "I was wrong." Jonathan knelt beside his daughter, taking her small hand in his. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Emma. Sometimes we believe things that aren't true because we're hurting, or scared, or angry. I was all of those things when your mother left. I said terrible things about her. I believed terrible things, but I was wrong." Emma looked back at Victoria. "Why did she leave?" "To protect us. There were bad people who wanted to hurt our family, and she thought the only way to keep us safe was to go away. She thought if they believed she was gone forever, they'd leave us alone." "Did it work?" "For a while, but she came back when we needed her most. She saved my life, Emma. She took a bullet meant for me." Emma's lower lip trembled. "Will she die?" "I don't know, but I need you to know something." Jonathan cupped his daughter's face, making sure she understood every word. "Everything I told you about your mother was true. She is brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever met. The only lie I told was that she didn't love you. She loved you so much she was willing to give up everything to keep you safe, even herself." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. She turned back to Victoria and did something that made Jonathan's heart shatter and reform all at once. She climbed onto the hospital bed, curling up against her mother's side like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "Wake up, Mommy," she whispered. "Please wake up. I want to meet you." Jonathan's mother covered her mouth, crying silently. The machines continued their steady rhythm, and then, so slight he almost missed it. Victoria's fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then clearing as they found Emma's face inches from her own. "Hi," Emma said, smiling through her tears. "I'm Emma. I'm your daughter." Victoria's eyes flooded with tears. Her hand, trembling and weak, rose to touch Emma's face. "You're real," she breathed. "You're really real. Are you going to leave again?" The question hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Victoria's gaze moved from Emma to Jonathan, and in her eyes he saw 5 years of pain and longing and desperate hope. "Never," Victoria whispered. "I'm never leaving you again. Either of you, I promise." Emma nestled closer, and Victoria wrapped her arm around their daughter, holding her like she'd held nothing else in 5 years. Over Emma's head, her eyes met Jonathan's. There was no forgiveness yet. No absolution. They had too much history, too many wounds that hadn't healed. But there was something else. A fragile bridge forming over the chasm that had separated them. "Thank you," Victoria mouthed. Jonathan reached out, his hand covering hers where it rested on Emma's back. The touch was electric, familiar and foreign all at once. "We have a lot to figure out," he said quietly. I know. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if we can ever be what we were. I don't expect you to. Victoria's voice was hoarse but steady. I just want the chance to be Emma's mother, to know her, to make up for the 5 years I stole from all of us. Emma yawned, exhaustion catching up with her. Can we be a family now, even if it's different? Victoria and Jonathan looked at each other over their daughter's head. The answer should have been simple, but nothing about them had ever been simple. We can try, Jonathan said finally. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Outside the hospital window, dawn broke over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. 6 months later, the beach house stood against the Pacific sunset, its windows glowing warm and golden. Emma's laughter carried on the salt wind as she chased waves with the fearless joy of childhood. Jonathan watched from the deck, a coffee mug warming his hands. Victoria emerged from the house, carrying 2 plates of sandwiches. Her movements were still careful, her body remembering the bullet that had nearly ended everything. She set the plates down and stood beside him, close but not touching. They existed in that careful distance now, orbiting each other like planets that had collided and were still figuring out their new trajectory. Margaret Cross was spotted in Singapore, Victoria said quietly. Interpol thinks they're close. Let them chase her. I'm done with that life. Are you? Victoria turned to face him, her green eyes searching. Because I'm not. She took 5 years from us, Jonathan. 5 years I can never get back with Emma. I need to see her pay for that. And if pursuing her costs you more time with Emma, what then? The question hung between them, sharp and challenging. Victoria looked out at their daughter, silhouetted against the dying light. You still don't trust me, she said softly. I'm trying to. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Jonathan set down his mug, finally voicing the fear that had haunted him since the hospital. You're a stranger wearing my wife's face. I look at you and see the woman I fell in love with. But I also see 5 years of deception. I see someone capable of walking away from everything we built. How do I reconcile those 2 people? Victoria's jaw tightened. You think I don't ask myself the same thing? You think I don't lie awake at night wondering if the man I loved is still in there? Or if Margaret's poison killed him years ago? That's not fair, isn't it? You believed her lies so easily, Jonathan. You threw away everything we had based on manufactured evidence. You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. The words were a knife between his ribs, precise and brutal. Because she was right. He had failed her when she needed him most. I was scared, he admitted, the confession tearing out of him. I was terrified that everything I believed about you, about us, was a lie. So I burned it all down before you could do it first. I destroyed you to protect myself from being destroyed. And now? Now I'm still scared, but for different reasons. Victoria moved closer, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, the same strawberry scent Emma used. What scares you? That I'm falling in love with you again. That Emma is falling in love with having a mother, that we're building something beautiful on a foundation of broken glass, and one day we'll take a wrong step, and it'll all come apart. Life is always built on broken glass, Victoria said. The trick is learning to walk carefully. Emma called out from the beach, waving frantically. Mommy, Daddy, come see what I found. The words Mommy and Daddy together, so natural now, still made Jonathan's chest ache. Victoria started toward the stairs, then stopped and looked back at him. I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm not asking you to forgive me, or to love me the way you used to. I'm just asking you to let us figure out what we are now. Not what we were, what we are. And if we figure out we're nothing, then at least we gave Emma a chance to know both her parents. That's more than we had 6 months ago. She descended the stairs, moving carefully through the sand toward their daughter. Jonathan watched them together, Victoria kneeling to examine the shell Emma had found, their matching green eyes bright with wonder. His phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer. Margaret Cross found dead in Singapore. Apparent suicide. Case closed. Jonathan stared at the words, feeling nothing. No triumph, no relief. Just the quiet understanding that some chapters end not with closure but with absence. Margaret Cross had taken so much from them, and now she was gone, leaving only wreckage in her wake. He deleted the message and walked down to the beach. Emma ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Look what Mommy and I found. It's perfect." The shell was ordinary, beautiful in its simplicity, the way all ordinary things are beautiful when you see them through a child's eyes. "It's perfect," he agreed. Victoria stood, brushing sand from her jeans. The sunset painted her in shades of amber and rose, and for a moment, she looked exactly like the woman he'd married 7 years ago. Then the moment passed, and she was Victoria Reeves again, stranger, survivor, the mother of his child. "I have a confession," she said. Jonathan's stomach tightened. "What?" "I'm terrified too. Every day. That I'll wake up and this will have been a dream. That you'll change your mind about letting me be part of Emma's life. That I'll mess this up the way I messed up everything else." "You didn't mess up everything. You saved my life. Only after I destroyed it." Emma looked between them, her smile fading. "Are you fighting?" "No," they said in unison. "Then why do you both look sad?" Jonathan knelt beside his daughter, Victoria mirroring him so they bracketed Emma between them. Sometimes grown-ups are sad and happy at the same time. We're happy because we're here together, but we're sad because we lost so much time before we got here. "But you're here now," Emma said with the simple logic of childhood. "That's what matters." She reached out, taking one of each of their hands, joining them together. Jonathan's fingers intertwined with Victoria's, and the touch sent electricity up his arm. Memory and possibility tangled together. "Promise you'll both stay," Emma demanded. "Promise you won't leave." "I promise," Victoria whispered. "I promise," Jonathan echoed. They walked back to the house together as the sun sank into the ocean, painting the sky in shades of ending and beginning. Inside, dinner waited. Homework needed checking. Bedtime stories needed reading. All the ordinary moments that made up a life, a family, a future. Jonathan didn't know if he and Victoria would find their way back to each other. He didn't know if the love they'd shared could survive the weight of everything that had broken between them. But he knew they would try. For Emma, for themselves. For the possibility that sometimes, broken things could be remade into something different, but no less beautiful. That night, after Emma fell asleep between them during movie night, Jonathan carried her to bed. When he returned, Victoria was standing at the window, silhouetted against the stars. "I love you," she said without turning around. "I never stopped, even when I hated you, even when I was running, even when I thought I'd never see you again. I loved you." Jonathan crossed the room and stood behind her, close enough to touch but not quite touching. "I love you too. I don't know what that means for us. I don't know if love is enough to fix everything we broke. Maybe it's not about fixing. Maybe it's about building something new." She turned, and they were face to face, breathing the same air. Jonathan reached up and touched her cheek, tracing the path a tear had left. "Maybe," he agreed. They stood like that as the night deepened around them, two people who had destroyed each other learning slowly, carefully, to build something from the ashes. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something harder and more honest. It was a beginning. Outside, the ocean sang its eternal song. Inside, Emma dreamed peacefully. And Jonathan and Victoria stood in the space between yesterday and tomorrow, holding the fragile possibility of the future in their scarred and trembling hands. Some stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with maybe, with possibly, with the courage to try again despite every reason not to. This was one of those stories. And for now, that was enough. The end.